The rise and decline of the Neo-Assyrian Empire. Hello everyone, welcome to Ancient Insights. In my last video, we examined the history of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, the military conquest and cruelty, and the rise of monotheism. In this video, we will discuss the rise and decline or collapse of the Neo-Assyrian Empire. Please stay tuned. The empire was revitalized by Tiglath Pileser III, 745 to 727 BC. He reorganized the military and restructured the bureaucracy of the government. According to Anglim, Tiglath Pileser III carried out extensive reform of the army, reasserted central control over the empire, reconquered the Mediterranean seaboard, and even subjugated Babylon. He replaced conscription into the military with a manpower levy imposed on each province and also demanded contingents from vassal states. He also defeated the kingdom of Urartu, which had again risen to trouble Assyrian rulers and subjugated the region of Syria. For some scholars, the Neo-Assyrian Empire actually began with Tiglath Pileser III. Laik, for example, writes, "In the time between 745 and 705 BC, the Assyrian Empire took shape. This was the result not only of renewed military expansion but also of new administrative structures that ensured much tighter political and fiscal control. Under Tiglath Pileser III's reign, the Assyrian army became the most effective military force in history up until that time and would provide a model for future armies in organization, tactics, training, and efficiency. Tiglath Pileser III was followed by Shalmaneser V, 727 to 722 BC, who continued the king's policies but was not as effective in military campaigns. His successor, Sargon II, 722 to 705 BC, was a brilliant military leader and administrator who expanded the empire further than any other king before him. Even though Sargon II's rule was contested by nobles who claimed he had seized the throne illegally, he maintained the cohesion of the empire, expanded the borders, improved legislation and administration, and kept the royal treasury filled through his conquest. Following Tiglath Pileser III's death, Sargon II was able to bring the empire to its greatest height politically and militarily. Sargon II founded the Sargonoid dynasty, which would rule the Assyrian Empire until its fall. The Sargonoid dynasty. Sargon II was followed by his son Sennacherib, 705 to 681 BC, who campaigned widely and ruthlessly, conquering Israel, Judah, and the Greek province in Anatolia. His siege of Jerusalem is detailed on the Taylor's Prism, a cuneiform block describing Sennacherib's military exploits, discovered in 1830 CE by Britain's Cornell Taylor, in which he claimed to have captured 46 cities and trapped the people of Jerusalem inside the city until he overwhelmed them. This account is contested, however, by the version of events described in the biblical book of 2 Kings chapter 18 and 19 and 2 Chronicles chapter 32 verse 21 and Isaiah 37, where it is claimed that Jerusalem was saved by divine intervention and Sennacherib's army was driven from the field. The biblical accounts does, however, relate the Assyrian conquest of the region. Sennacherib's military victories increased the wealth of the empire beyond what Sargon II had accomplished, even though his reign was marked by persistent military campaigns against Babylon and the Elamites. He moved the capital from Sargon's city of Dur-Sharrukin to Nineveh and built what was known as a palace without a rival. He beautified and improved upon the city's original structure, planting orchards and gardens. Babylon had been a persistent problem throughout Sennacherib's reign, and he finally grew tired of dealing with it. Ignoring the lessons of the past and not content with his great wealth and the luxury of the city, Sennacherib drove his army against Babylon, sacked it, and looted the temples. As earlier in history with Tiglath-Pileser I, 1244 to 1208 BC, the looting and destruction of the temples of Babylon was seen as a height of sacrilege by the people of the region, and also by Sennacherib's son, who assassinated him in his palace at Nineveh in order to placate the wrath of the gods. Sennacherib had chosen his youngest son, Esarhaddon, to succeed him in 683 BC, and this did not sit well with his older brothers. While their motive in murdering their father could well have been their desire for power and to cut off their younger brother's hopes for the crown, they would have needed some kind of justification for the act, and their father's sack of Babylon provided the rationalization. Sennacherib's son, Esarhaddon, 681 to 669 BC, took the throne, defeated his brother's factions in a 6-week civil war, and then executed his brother's families, associates, and anyone who had joined against him. With his rule now secured, one of his first projects was to rebuild Babylon. He issued an official proclamation that claimed that Babylon had been destroyed by the will of the gods, owing to the city's wickedness and lack of respect for the divine. Nowhere in his proclamation does he mention Sennacherib or his role in the destruction of the city, but makes clear that the gods choose Esarhaddon as a divine means for restoration. Once during the previous ruler's reign, there were bad omens. The city insulted its gods and was destroyed at their command. They chose me, Esarhaddon, to restore everything to its rightful place, to calm their anger and soothe their rage. The empire flourished under his reign. He successfully conquered Egypt, which Sennacherib had tried and failed to do, because according to Herodotus II, field mice ate through the strings of Sennacherib's archers' bows, their quivers, and the soldiers' shield traps the night before battle. Esarhaddon established the empire's borders as far north as the Zagros Mountains in modern-day Iran, and as far south as Nubia, modern-day Sudan, with a span including the Levant, modern-day Lebanon, to Israel, through Anatolia and Turkey. His successful military campaigns and careful maintenance of the government provided the stability for advances in medicine, literacy, mathematics, astronomy, architecture, and the arts. In order to secure the peace, Esarhaddon entered into vassal treaties with the Persians and the Medes, requiring them to submit in advance to his successors. Further, Esarhaddon's mother, Zakutu, 701 to 668 BC, issued a decree known as the Loyalty Treaty of Nakia-Zakutu that compelled the Assyrian courts and the subject territories to accept Ashurbanipal as king and support his reign. This ensured the easy transition of power when Esarhaddon died, preparing to campaign against the Nubians, and rule was passed to the last great Assyrian king, Ashurbanipal, 668 to 627 BC. Ashurbanipal was the most literate of the Assyrian rulers and is probably best known in the modern day for the vast library he collected at his palace at Nineveh. Though a great patron of the arts and culture, Ashurbanipal could be just as ruthless as his predecessors in securing the empire and intimidating his enemies. He decisively defeated the Elamites, completed his father's conquest of Egypt, and expanded the empire further to the east and north. Recognizing the importance of preserving the past, he then sent envoys to every point in the land under his control and had them retrieve or copy the books of that city or town, bringing all back to Nineveh for the royal library. While he was not the first king to collect books, he was the first to make such a collection a priority. But what then led to the decline or fall of the empire? Ashurbanipal ruled over the empire for 42 years, and in that time campaigned successfully and ruled efficiently. The empire had, however, grown too large and the regions were overtaxed. Further to that, the vastness of the Assyrian domain made it difficult to defend the borders. As great in number as the army remained, there were not enough men to keep garrison at every significant port or outpost. When Ashurbanipal died in 627 BC, the empire began to fall apart. His successors, Ashur-etlilani and Sinshar-ishkun, were unable to hold the territories together and regions began to break away. The rule of the Assyrian Empire was seen as overtly harsh by its subjects. In spite of whatever advances and luxury being an Assyrian citizen may have provided, and former vassal state rose in revolt. In 612 BC, Nineveh was sacked and burned by a coalition of Babylonians, Persians, Medes, and Scythians, as was Ashur and the other cities of the Assyrians. The destruction of the palace brought the flaming walls down on the library of Ashurbanipal, and although it was far from the intention, preserved the great library and the history of the Assyrians by breaking and burying the clay tablets or books. According to historian Kriozek, the Assyrians' enemies ultimately failed to achieve their aim when they razed Ashur and Nineveh in 612 BC, 15 years after Ashurbanipal's death. They had intended to wipe out Assyria's place in history. Still, the destruction of the great Assyrian cities was so complete that within 2 generations of the empire's fall, no one knew where the cities had been. The ruins of Nineveh were covered by the sands and lay buried for the next 2,000 years. The Assyrians were remembered, however, because of the records of the Greek and Roman writers, and also due to their mention in the Bible. Archaeological interest in Mesopotamia was fueled in the 19th century CE by the desire to corroborate biblical narratives of the Old Testament with historical evidence. The Assyrians, who had been masters of the land in their day, again played an important role in history by drawing the attention of archaeologists and scholars to the Mesopotamian region, where the whole of Mesopotamian culture was eventually revealed. Prior to the 19th century CE, the Sumerians were unknown, as were many of the myths, legends, and historical events which are recognized today as so important. These stories are available to modern-day readers because of the preservation of the books. The clay tablets that were discovered beneath the walls of Nineveh and elsewhere revealed to the modern world the myths, legends, and histories of the people of Mesopotamia, and their discovery provided a new understanding of world history and culture. What are your thoughts? If you have any questions or ideas to share, please leave it in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe for more insightful videos like this. Like and share with friends and family on social media if you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching.